All right, here we are. Stand up. October. How did it become October? Okay, October 12th. Bryce, you are the first one in my window.
Yeah, so I've been mostly trying to get the like Jefferson Parish side of the e-filing stuff up and tested on the latest stuff, which was I'm glad that I did because there was a relatively I don't know if they would have run into it running live, but there was a weird issue where like I had realized that or it was relatively large oversight that like, oh yeah, Tyler can have a thing called like a court called Jefferson too. And we're not prefacing like
yeah.
or at least like we weren't prefacing like what jurisdiction each of the courts were in. And I was like, oh, that's a really big duh. So I did that yesterday. And that was
accidentally filed to Jefferson Parish from Jefferson.
It probably wouldn't Virginia. Have gone it wouldn't have gone through because it wouldn't have all of like the Tyler things, but it would be a bigger issue if we start having like multiple Tyler things at the same point when I would have gone to Illinois instead of Massachusetts or something. And so that's and fixed and I have the changes, all of the changes that like make sure the interviews work with like the new proxy server, and that is all good. And I'm doing a full like let me delete most of the Docker stuff that I have on my machine and all of the volumes and try spinning up stuff with just Jefferson Parish, like Docker, just like sort of the steps that the Supreme Court would have to go through to do all of this, just to make sure that there's not like there won't be any like, I forgot to mention there's this config you'll need to do. Well, heck, we can have everything laid out, and I have like making the scripts for updating and everything. So I'm in the middle of doing that, and going through one of the divorce interview right now. So,
all right, cool. Yeah. So coming along.
Yeah, coming along.
So piggybacking on that, we'll meet with them on Thursday, and see if they help them with remind them of whatever configurations are needed for the Docker server. Recognizing that we'll probably pause on moving the proxy server over, but we'll give them the menu list of options, which is you can host the proxy server. We could host the proxy server. Jefferson Parish could host the proxy server. These are all things that wouldn't require. I mean, it's sort of a. I'm not going to say it. It's not an entirely arbitrary distinction to call the proxy server something different. We call it something different as a thing, but it really is just asking them to add a service to their server.
Yeah, and even then we can try and like I haven't done a lot of explicit like hardening, but we could like the only weird thing is that it's you might want HTTPS, and because this isn't like Nginx or like some standard server, it's a little harder, and you can't we don't have it set up so you can just use like Let's Encrypt or something. But it could be as like we could try and set it up just so that it's like you're running a single Docker command compose or Docker compose command instead of a single like spin up the single docassemble Docker command. So it'll both just be one command, and we can try and make sure that like no one's going to be accessing the proxy server outside of just that Docker instance. And like no, and like I can try and make sure that the Docker setup, it should be good, but it should try and make sure the Docker setup is like no one can see that the proxy server exists outside of the Docker instance, which is all we really want. So
yeah. Okay, well, we'll give them the menu of options.
Yeah.
And we'll see where they want to go down. They might have to ask some people which thing they want to choose off the menu. But at the end of the day, this has been the conversation for over a year, so we just need to sort of sync everyone up to that. Okay, cool. But it sounds like for tomorrow, then it really is just configurations on the existing Dockassemble server, and we don't really need to get into the details of much anything else because they'll probably just want to choose from a menu. So is there anything Jefferson Parish aside? So you said you were doing stuff with the divorce and whatnot. Is that really just integrating the e-filing part, or?
So that was already integrated. It was since in the like brand or like it had been integrated with like a much earlier version of the proxy server.
Oh, okay.
And the new stuff was
I
think the equivalent of just there's now like there's a contact that could be like a lead contact that could doesn't have to be necessarily like the first user that
Mhm.
you're using, and also like says this is in Louisiana for like the jurisdiction thing that had just mentioned, and so it's like 2 lines that I'm adding to each of those interviews essentially. So that was really straightforward. It was mostly proxy server fixes. So
All right, cool. All right, sounds good. Quentin.
All right, today not too much, other than just trying to look through our list of upcoming issues on the Weaver and assembly line runtime stuff. I think I'm going to take a stab at some of the docx validation stuff today to see if I can move that forward a bit. Some of my students should be turning in outlines for their projects today, and they'll get started actually working on the automation in the upcoming weeks. So that's where I am.
Exciting. Michelle.
I'm just here set dressing. I've nothing on this project. So I think I made a PR, but I think that already got accepted and merged and all that stuff. Thanks, guys. I would like to approach the signature thing and have another go at that. If like there's nothing else useful, or I guess I'd like to know the priorities at some point and then kind of pick amongst the menu and try and do either some small things or my own things. So I'm not holding anything up.
I don't think we have any, I mean, we don't have, as far as sort of assembly line goes, outside of stuff that's already sort of staffed, I don't think we have any large we want to move some of our old stuff across the finish line. We want to refactor like the guardianship stuff, Quentin, for Tommy and Sarah.
Would it be useful to help with that?
I don't know, Quentin, what were your thoughts there?
Either of those, moving stuff across the finish line or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a backlog from the summer of a lot of forms that were close to being ready, right? That we just need to look at. And I did open a couple issues where I opened some questions for you, Michelle. So I don't know if
I have not seen them yet, so I'll look at them.
It was last week, so it might be something you saw and then didn't have a response to at the time.
Or totally forgot about. Yes, perfect.
But today, I was trying to work on the upload size code that you had started. And I ran into a little blocker, which you might be able to help. So I pinged you on the Teams channel for that. I bet hopefully it'll be fast for you. I think I'd be stuck or a little slower at working on it.
Sure.
I could try to gather some of those issues for you. But David, that I had open when I was doing some triage in the last couple of weeks, just up to you, whatever things seem interesting though, It was just some things where it's like, hey, this is something Michelle might have worked on before. Maybe she want to work on it again to move it forward, or maybe not.
Sure. For
the guardianship, I actually haven't tried running it to see how close it is if there's like bugs and stuff that prevent someone telling me from even looking at it, that would be probably pretty helpful.
Yeah.
To make sure it actually works.
I haven't looked at it in forever. I feel like it starts something up and then dies. But there is a discussion of what parts are dying in the little very, very short write-up, which is to say 1 page. I think 1.5 pages maybe that we had left from the last person working on it. So I could share that back out in the in one of our channels. And Michelle, if you wanted to, you could run through and just see where it breaks. And if it's the type of thing, and again, neither Quentin nor I have looked at it with depth, know if it's the type of thing where it breaks because it's just like there's nothing after that of any worth, or if it breaks because like there were tenuous little connections somewhere that look like they could maybe be recovered. I mean, it was definitely a work in progress. But the question is, I guess we're not really clear what state it is in. So it might be worth an exploratory look with the knowledge that apparently like the workflow and some of the logic is going to undergo some I don't want to call it drastic changes, but substantive changes due to the subject matter experts' feedback and sort of a change in focus.
What we were thinking we would do with it is just get it so it's runnable, so that then a new student who's working on it this semester could look at it and understand where to start making changes, essentially.
Yeah.
So that was something we hadn't done yet.
I can share that out, Michelle, if that sounds like something you want to look at.
Yes, send it on out and I'll see
Mhm.
if I can land on it.
Let me see. I might have assigned you as like a default way to let you know about things, but I might have just asked you as a comment. I think I mostly assigned you to issues, so
I should be able to see them in
you
my
should be able to
list.
see them for that reason. Yeah.
Sure, sure.
But just as like a, hey, is this something you want to do? Basically,
All right.
these don't seem to be. Well, let me see. Maybe there's something on the Weaver. If you're just looking like, I want to pick up the next thing, and I'm a bit floundering myself in terms of like what is the first thing I should do. So try to
Okay.
transition back.
That's good to know. It's good to know.
Something else that we need to do at some point is make that call back, but I don't think that would be a good task to get started on unless you're really excited about it. We want to build in some facts functionality with an API
right.
that's not going to die in a month. So we need to add a callback for that. I was starting to teach myself how to do that.
Add a callback like in DocAssemble or in JavaScript or what? Like
a webhook is
Okay.
what I really should have said. That's the phrasing that they use. But yeah, we need a URL that can respond to the updates from the fax service that we're using. Status updates.
Is there an issue for it?
There's not, I don't think. Oh, there might be on a specific repository.
Yeah, I don't know. Aubrey may have had it as an issue for herself. I don't think anything was assigned anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are, I mean, so at the end of the day, the real answer is like, there's no like burning, dying, like this needs to be front of the line. So that means that if there's something that's more interesting to you than something else, that would be,
Yeah.
I'd say follow those. The slight preference towards this health form, because that is one that we need to get it ready for someone else to work on. So it would be nice to look at that. So I'll share back out the little write-up that points to all the repos for that, and you can give it a look.
Okay.
And then if you open it up and look at it like, no, I do not want to deal with this, then just tell us that.
Yeah,
and
I'll
then,
let you know.
and then we'll be like, okay, we didn't know it was in that state. We'll deal with it. But if it's just like, oh, well, this is where it's at. And just needs a little bit of something to get it ready again, just for someone else to be able to poke in, and we just want to get it to the point where someone who doesn't have a really big background in DocAssemble would be able to go in and edit it and change things around.
All right. Okay.
All right, cool. Great. I had a call today with someone in the Utah courts who they're interested in, and they're doing an overhaul of their forms. And they're actually going to create a bunch of fillable forms to have them sit in. It's not clear, the person I spoke to wasn't entirely sure what stage things were on sort of the tech stack they're choosing, but it sounds like they've already chosen a tech stack and they already have a vendor who's going to be working with them on things. And it sounds like they're just going to build a lot of fillable PDF forms. But that being said, the idea of sort of the modular use of the tools that we're envisioning for the next Pew grant was appealing to them. And so they really like the idea of the Form Explorer. And we also talked about timelines. And the thing that was nice about the Form Explorer was that even though they might build some stuff beforehand, they see the Form Explorer as having evergreen usage. So, even if we don't finish that for a bit of time, they still would see a value in working to help make it come into fruition. So I told them I would touch base with them again after we actually sign with Pew, and I've had some time to think about a roadmap. So I suggested in like the next, 2 to 3 weeks or so, just to touch base with them again. But so that's a potential partner for that stuff. He also mentioned, and I don't know if anyone else knows this name, Lucy Ricca. She apparently does work in Utah, has helped with some of the regulatory sandbox stuff, but is based at Stanford. And it sounds like they are, it sounds like her group is starting to do a thing looking at courts and who might be open to doing stuff. It sounds like more of like a policy, like directed thing. It didn't sound like it was related to the class Margaret's teaching. But I didn't know if anyone had heard about that. So I was gonna, if people had, I would take with that information. But if not, I'm just gonna reach out to her. Or
Is
Margaret.
it at all connected? It's not the Pew Civil Modernization Framework thing that they're working on. From what I can tell, it doesn't sound like it's related to that.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't sound like
maybe
it.
it's overlapping.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Motivation.
I think all of this is overlapping, which is why the name came up. He's like, I don't want to, like, if you're both, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know. All right.
She hasn't
So,
been in any of those meetings, so but I'm curious if maybe somebody on the Pew team would have heard of that project, because obviously they do projects with Stanford.
yeah. All right. Well, maybe what I'll do then is I'll reach out to Pew as a common party and be like, hey, do you know this person? And are they doing stuff with you already? And then we can fold them in, or should we just like cold call them? All right.
Yeah, I don't really know. Sounds interesting. I mean, we don't know more about what it is exactly that they're doing.
No, it was very
Just that
vague.
it's something about courts.
We know enough to know that the
policies.
person that I was speaking to, who is not a technical person, had just recently spoken to her about something, and it sounded like they might be related. So they had basically the same conversation we just had, like, is she part of the this or the this? That's the level. So, okay, so I'll follow up there. But he did seem very excited about the idea of the Form Explorer. He thought it would be maybe difficult to get access to historic filled out forms. But I think the place we landed was it would be difficult, not impossible. And since this wouldn't have the same timeline as other things, that maybe it would be worth that effort, right? So that's just something to think about there. All right. I think that was, the appeals court form that Paul said was okay. Did we move that to production, or?
No, not anything that I've worked on.
All right. We should try to think about moving, because he gave the feedback on those 2 forms. So we take a look and see if we can move one over to production. And then also, have you put any links or info in for the up to code on the?
No, I haven't done that either.
All right. Well, if you do that, I will throw the links onto Court Forms Online.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's everything on my end. All right. Anything from anyone else?
Just reminding about the expungement and sealing stuff. I don't know if that's still on the radar. So
I think it's on the radar, and I think, as I had flagged before, the serious talks for that probably wouldn't come until the beginning of the next semester.
Sure. Just gonna mention it every now
No, it's
and
good.
then.
Keep reminding me. Because I think what we want to do is we want to get the I want to get the lit fellows to the place where the work they've done is sort of seen and valued by the person who might be the one who would think about sort of giving it a home, as it were, from a subject matter perspective.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks.
All right. That is, I think, everything, all the news